It has nothing to do with anything else in the episode. And that's just one little shocking scene. It's like the old peep shows in the 1930s where you look through the little hole and you're like, oh my, how shocking.
Off the back of our scathing interview of the Acolyte,
I thought it was pretty nice.
we returned.
No, I wasn't.
We returned with Nerd Legion. Will we go back to the Acolyte? Maybe, if it continues being super bad. There's no way it's going to be good. But this week, we are going to be switching over to the latest season of The Boys on Amazon Prime. This is season 4 that is starting up now. Doa and I have seen all of The Boys to this point in time. I've also read a good chunk of the graphic novels, the original graphic novels. So I can talk a little bit about that. But this is a show that I was enjoying up until the end of season 3. And then I think it kind of went off the rails, and I enjoy quite a lot conceptually. And this season is okay. It's okay so far in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I thought the first 2 seasons were pretty solid in what they were doing, right? And I've never read the graphic novel, so I have no context as far as like how close or far the show is from that. But I thought the first 2 seasons were pretty good as sort of a critique. I mean, it's it's very obviously a critique of capitalism. It's also like kind of a send up satire, whatever you want to say, of all the superhero stuff that's going on right now, And I liked it as that. I especially liked like in season 2 when they were kind of like shooting their own like MCU stuff, kind of. You know?
It's great.
That was really funny. And then season 3, it started to lose me a little bit, and the ending very much lost me. When he like kills the guy and like everyone's fine with that. I'm like, all right, that was this show's jumping the shark moment, where it just became too unrealistic of a narrative, and it became like too intense in its sort of I guess satire. But
it's not really satire, though. That's the problem. We'll get into that. I want to talk about some of the good stuff about this show and the things that I really like about it first, which is like I love the parts that are satire, the satire of superheroes. I actually love the fact, and obviously the original graphic novel isn't set in the modern day, so they did some good things, I think, to update it in terms of modernity, especially around, like you say, the Marvel Universe concept and social media usage, and this kind of stuff is like really good integrations to the show. And where I think The Boys is very successful is that it has a very realistic take on what superheroes would be like in the 2020s, right? Yeah. If there was this big corporation that was basically a marketing arm for the superheroes, where not only were they doing things in real life, but they were doing these films in order to make them bigger stars. They were very cynically pushing their identities, right? And they were basically the ultimate cynical corporation, which is very fun to look at right now, because you see all the, either the ridiculous like core values that organizations have, either to appeal to left wing or right wing. And what's so funny about Vought is they're trying to do both things simultaneously. Like, you're appealing towards conservatives with like, here's Starlight and her Christian pageant upbringing, and here's Homelander. Yeah. And then on the other side, it's like, here's Queen Maeve. She's gay, and we're going to market that. So I think it's like,
girls get it done.
It's like a deeply cynical but realistic view of what a company like Vought would be doing in the 2020s. And I think that is really where it's at its best, as well as the moral complexities of these superheroes and the human psychology behind them. Homelander, who grew up kind of in a lab, right? And is now deeply psychologically damaged as a result of that. And the acting is also very good in the series. So these are the core parts of The Boys that I find. Oh, also, Doa, I think the Deep is just hilarious.
Go over there, pull out A-Train's cock, and blow him.
Sex is just a spectrum, right, bro?
Get off your fucking knees.
Like the Deep is his entire character arc, from his lame Aquaman powers to him joining Scientology effectively to his sexual escapades with various sea animals, is really funny. And also he's just so stupid and like so gullible that the acting and the presentation of this character are just, there's always funny. And the way that he's just Homelander's like bitch for all of eternity is also just really funny.
Earn more every season.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is all great about The Boys. And I think it was at its most successful in season 1 and season 2 when it was mostly focused on these things before it started getting into the soap opera elements, the nonsensical plot devices, the introduction of Temp V. I actually still think it's successful with the Newman story and the fact that she's actually a superhero who's manipulating the government in secret. Like that stuff's all very good too. But the modern political takes, it's not even satire. It's just putting the stuff that's in the real world into the show, which isn't very interesting because I don't feel like I'm getting a dimensionalized take on it or a different perspective. I just feel like it's just there because it's happening in real life.
It's like almost too self-aware now, but
yes,
to me too, like the thing that, and like the thing is, I will say straight up, I don't usually like a show that's this raunchy and like this violent. Like I just don't enjoy watching that kind of stuff, And
it offends Doa's delicate Midwestern sensibilities. I don't care.
No,
I think the really hyperviolence is actually really funny in this.
It really isn't even that, and it's not a problem necessarily with the hyperviolence. I love Monty Python and stuff. Back in the day, they did a lot of that kind of stuff too. And what we're just watching, Fallout, they do that too. But I feel like the elements, the timing in which they use that is done in a much more effective comedic way, where this is a lot of like just gore for gore's sake in a lot of cases. I think season 1 and season 2 are much closer to Monty Python Fallout in terms of using gore for the purpose of humor, but now it's just there for shock value, And I think that also can apply to like the raunchy side of it too. And like it isn't really even a values thing for me because like whatever, I don't care that much, right? But like I find it distracting, and my take on that kind of content has always been the less of it there is, the larger audience you can appeal to. And I think generally when you make an artistic product, you usually want more people to see it than less people to see it. So if you're going to include those elements in your show, I think you have to make sure they're included in a way that really, really works, And I think, like I said, season 1 and season 2 do a good job of that. Season 3 and now season 4, I think it's more just being done because the audience is expecting it now, and so they're just kind of including it more randomly for sort of shock value. And like shock value has always been the lamest way to include anything in any show. So, because it's not, shock isn't humor, right? Shock is just shock, right? And like your reaction to maybe laugh at it isn't because it's funny. It's just because you're having that psychological reaction to it. So that's, I think, just overall raunchiness and hyperviolence needs to be used correctly to be, appealing to me, And I feel like they're missing the boat on that one now.
I didn't do anything, okay?
Okay,
I swear.
let's just all calm down. You just tell us the truth. We swear you'll be fine, right?
Yes, I swear.
She just wanted some help tracking.
But overall, the thing that keeps me coming back to this show, 100%, the number one thing is the acting. Like the acting is so good. I like so many of the actors in this, and I love the way that they're portraying the characters. Like Anthony Starr as Antony, and Anthony Starr as Homelander is like one of the best characters I've ever seen in any show, just because of how he portrays that character is just always being just on the edge of going absolutely ballistic, right? and this character is together enough to keep it together when he needs to, but just his portrayal of communicating through facial expressions, things like that this character is always on the edge, makes it just one of the most menacing characters I've ever seen in any show. I love his portrayal of that character. Sometimes it's funny. A lot of times it's very scary. It is always compelling.
I've given you everything that I ever wanted, and it's still not good enough for you. Why? You're ungrateful? You go behind my back? You lie to me? Why?
But I have to. So he's the number one shout out.
Yeah,
I have to shout out.
I think what he does so well is that he communicates very effectively with his eyes, in that he can be smiling, but he's still kind of like his eyes are darting around, looking at things. His eyes don't smile, or his eyes smile when the rest of his face isn't. So like he disconnects his eyes from the rest of his face in a really interesting way. And Homelander also, I love the fact that he thinks he's calculating, but he's actually just very impulsive a lot of the time, and he's not very intelligent. He doesn't really have grand plans. He basically just brute forces people into positions that they're in and toys with them. And he doesn't have like an intelligent overarching strategy. And he often actually just kills the people who are trying to strategize for him, which you have to believe is probably coming with Sage in this arc as well. But to a certain degree, he is, he has a very interesting tension between being self-aware. Like, he is aware, and there is a great scene in the first 3 episodes of this show where he is talking to himself in the broken glass after he gets into a fight with his son Ryan.
You still need love. So much love. You still crave it.
That's not true.
You're gonna make him weak and needy like you. You can still fix things. He's your son. He hates you.
And he is aware that he has this fundamental need to be loved because of his childhood, obviously, that we've been shown, where he didn't receive any of that, and he's trying to get away from that. And he also knows that he needs Sage to create a plan in order to enact his, because he's not smart enough to do that, which is why he gets Sage into the 7 in the first place. But it's this constant tension between his need for love, right, and his need for admiration, as well as, and Sage mentions this, and I think this is actually one of the most successful parts of the season, which is that, he can't stop himself from overtaking these situations. He can't stop himself, even though the strategy for his son is not for him to be there. He has to be, he still has to be there.
Who are you?
My name is
Ryan.
Dad.
It's okay, son. I'm here. We're gonna save America together.
So he knows he needs Sage, but he also won't do the things that Sage tells him to do because his need for admiration or his need for control like overtakes him in those moments. And so there's a difference between what he does and what he thinks, right? Or what he thinks he needs to do. So that at its core of the show is what makes Homelander super interesting. And I wish we got more of that and less of the like really nakedly modern political stuff, which I find to be the most boring parts of this show.
Of course, yeah. I mean, like we all watch the news. We know what's going on in American politics and all that. And it's like, if you're going to include a commentary on that in your show, at least be like somewhat clever about it.
Yeah, it's a 1-to-1. It's not satire. Yeah, it's just a copy paste. That's like, okay,
which,
well,
maybe that's kind of a critique in itself on the point that things have gotten to in our nation. But that's a whole different podcast. But either way, like I think they could be handling it better. But back to the actors. Like everyone in the show is great. I don't have a single character that I don't think is well acted and compelling. Honestly, they are all, very distinct. They are all just extremely compelling. I mean, like I've been a big Karl Urban fan for like a long time, right? I think a lot of us first saw him as Éomer in Lord of the Rings, but then he went on to be Vako in Chronicles of Riddick, which very underrated film and a very underrated character in that film because he's playing this sort of like him and his partner, spouse. I'm not sure what quite the relationship is there. They're together, but they're trying to almost have this sort of like Shakespearean take down the king sort of subplot in the middle of all this, and it's a great character. But then obviously Dredd. So he's done so many great things, and he's just equally great as Billy Butcher in this series. And he's able to be so different in every role too. There's a lot of people where it's like, oh yeah, that's Tom Cruise, and it's just Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is always going to be Tom Cruise, right? But I feel like or like Will Smith. Will Smith is always going to be Will Smith, right? I enjoy watching Will Smith in movies, and I enjoy watching Tom Cruise in movies, but they're always kind of Tom Cruise and Will Smith, Whereas like Karl Urban is able to, to use a cliched term, disappear into these characters, right? Where it's like you stop kind of seeing the actor and you start only seeing the character, and that is such it just feels like that's such a rare talent right now that you know, it's so nice, you know, when you see it.
Before, you asked if I was scared. And the truth of the matter is I'm bloody terrified, mate.
And a lot of the other actors I frankly just don't know well enough. And you know, I think a lot of the other actors kind of have became big from this show, you know, and so they aren't attached to other franchises, other characters. They don't have that kind of like unintentional baggage coming into it. So you get to just kind of enjoy it from that perspective too, which is one of the other things I really like about this show too, is it's a lot of actors that I wasn't really familiar with. And so I get to just see them as the characters, you know, but Karl Urban, the one actor that I am familiar with, is just very good in his role. So he kind of fits right into all that too. But yeah, I mean, that's what keeps coming back to me is the characters are great and they're very well acted. Aside from that, you know, I mean, if you want to get into this season, I feel like they have it's like you know, you either end your season the hero or you keep your series going long enough to, you know, become the same thing as everything else. And that's what we have now, where we have like spin-off things now. I didn't watch it, but there was like the spin-off
Gen
with
V,
like,
yeah, the teen drama version.
Right. And then like last season they started doing the thing where like people were dying and they're like, well, this person's clearly really not dead. You know, it's like this false drama. And so for as much as the show liked to, you know, poke fun at the MCU in the first couple seasons and all that, it kind of seems like it's going that direction now, where, you know, we just now all these characters have big fans of them, so they have to try to like have them do the thing the fans like, you know, and it's all starting to feel very generic and repeated, and that's my vibe for this season, is that it's a lot of stuff I've seen before.
Yeah, and it's starting to do not only that, but, you know, all the other comic book tropes of like, well, we take away the powers and then we give back the powers. It's like, A-Train can't run fast anymore. And, we just introduced this character who's racist. And then he paralyzes his brother who's been training him. And then A-Train kills him. And then A-Train gets a heart transplant. So now his powers are fixed. And he doesn't have that problem where he has like a heart attack if he goes too fast anymore, right? And then we also have, Soldier Boy takes away Kimiko's powers. But then Kimiko, you know, gets some of the V and then gets her powers back. And it's like, I'm so sick of this shit, man. It's just like, as far as fake drama goes, you're absolutely right. And then not only that, but this season also just undoes everything in the last season. So remember, last season they had to go to Russia and get Soldier Boy out because Soldier Boy was supposed to be the one who could kill Homelander.
That was kind of cool.
It was cool. I agree. I think the concept of Soldier Boy was super cool. But then Soldier Boy, you know, they get into a fight and Ryan's in danger, so they don't let Soldier Boy kill him. And then Soldier Boy falls out Maeve has to take him and fall out the window. And then he takes away Maeve's powers. Guess who's getting their powers back next? You know.
Right. Yeah. Guess who's actually alive? Oh, you thought Maeve was dead. Nope, she's fine, apparently.
Yeah. And then we had this entire arc with the temp fee, and it was like, if you keep taking temp fee, it's going to kill you, which then created this you know, the butcher is dying storyline that we have right now, which obviously
we know isn't going to happen, like, because now we see the thing squiggling around in his brain, and you're like, oh, he's not actually going to die. He's just got this like thing in his brain that obviously they're going to find out about and remove, and he's going to be fine, and you know, but he's going to reconcile with his son at the same time.
But it's just like all of the drama that we had in season 3. So the retrieval of Soldier Boy, the attempt to kill Homelander, the temp V usage, which was giving Butcher and Huey superpowers, it's all gone now, just all erased, right? And it feels really weird because, you know, we know Soldier Boy's still alive because he got shelved at the CIA, you know what I mean? Like, so all this stuff is just going to come back, but it's like, nothing that happened last season has any relevance or bearing on the plot right now, except for the fact that Butcher is dying.
Yeah, I also really don't enjoy the change with Black Noir, right? Where it's like,
he just shows up again. They just replace him. They replace him,
but they replace him with like a character that's supposed to be comedy relief now, but he's not really funny. Those scenes aren't funny.
You didn't hire me to stand around like a fucking oak tree.
What do you need?
Some direction. Look, I'm on an island here. Okay, I have questions, but I'm not allowed to speak. Is there like a playlist I can use to get me inside his head?
Shut the fuck up, you are, and everyone take your seats.
And so, now we've just got that element to it too. And the whole, like, the first 3 episodes seem very formulaic. And I was kind of feeling this way a little bit about last season at times too, where it's like each episode of the show has very distinct segments that continue to repeat. We have like drama scene. Oh, soap opera drama. We have, the hide from Homelander scene, where it's like Homelander should be able to catch you and kill you anytime he wants to, and yet somehow Huey every single episode, or somebody every single episode, manages barely to get away, which just, it doesn't work anymore. We've seen that so many times. It's like, obviously Homelander would have caught them by now and all that. And then we always have our big fight scene that has some sort of zany, shocking element to it that is supposed to make you be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that in this show. Oh, the multiple guy is naked and the whole fight is with him naked. Oh wow.
I mean, that was actually funny. So I actually like that scene. I thought it was funny.
It's like, but it's not really, there's nothing to it, right? It's just thrown in there. It's shocking for the sake of being shocking, because we don't see a lot of like naked dudes fighting on TV, but who cares? Just naked dude, right? So it's like, instead of, in the place of something creative, which I feel like they would have done in season 1 and season 2, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but now we have things like that, or just the random shock elements, like they open the door and he's tonguing his own ass like 5 times in a row. It's like, it has nothing to do with anything else in the episode. And that's just one little shocking scene. It's like the old peep shows in the 1930s where you look through the little hole and you're like, oh my, how shocking. It's like, it doesn't add anything.
Or the scene where, what is her name? Ashley, the Vought CEO, is just like in the BDSM scene with the dude who's hog-tied, handcuffed on the floor. It's like, crush my balls, which like I get. So I think the human caterpillar anal licking scene is more dumb than that scene, because at least I will say the Ashley scene, it shows that she has like, because she is such a sub to Homelander at work, and she has no power over his life. There is a character moment where you're like, oh, she needs to take control in this sexual situation, because her own life has become so bad that now she has to she's just like displacing all of this need for power into this weird sex stuff, which is fine, right? But it still is kind of overly shocking for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point. Again, if you're going to use that sort of thing, I feel like you have to use it in a way that's very carefully crafted. Otherwise, like I said, just shocking for shocking's sake, and it's not additive, right? That's whenever I see that kind of thing, and my question is like, is it additive to the experience and to the story, to the characters? And a lot of times this season, and a lot of times last season too, I feel like it's really not, And like I feel like a lot of people would think that I would include like the hero-gasm stuff from season 3 in this, but I actually don't, because like that serves to really press home the point of like just how depraved superheroes would probably be if they were real with these powers, So like that actually like didn't bother me as much as like this other stuff that's just kind of thrown in there. Like I said, it's like, it really is like the modern version of like those 1920s or whatever peep shows where you put in like the nickel and look through and it's like this lewd picture and you're supposed to be like, oh my, if only they knew what I was looking at, that's the kind of feeling that this evokes whenever these scenes happen, so it bores me basically, so that's my concern about this show, because I did kind of like this show in season 1 and season 2. Like I said, the characters keep bringing me back to it. But it seems like it is going to a very formulaic, generic place, and that concerns me, because I hate to see the show go that way. And it seems like
it's interesting, because there have been plot lines that have been very compelling throughout this show. Like, I like the Newman plot line that's going on right now, where she's secretly a superhero who's assassinating people in her way, in her like quest for power. And I actually, what was so disappointing about in this season, where Homelander's trying to out her and is just like trying to kill Huey, right, is that what was keeping Homelander in check was the fact that she had this power over Homelander, and then what's keeping her in check is her need to keep the secret while she is trying to regulate superheroes, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a very interesting tension there, and that's much more X-Men like, obviously, in terms of controlling people with superhuman abilities, and I think that's always basically interesting, and we've talked about that in our X-Men 97 episode, which is like that's one of the most compelling parts of X-Men as well. So I enjoyed that dynamic of like everybody kind of just having to keep a lid on it, and they can't kill Huey and they can't kill the boys because then they would reveal Newman's secret. You know what I mean? I think that the Ryan stuff with Homelander's son is potentially very interesting. But what's really boring is the whole like what do they call it? Homeboys versus Starlighters movement. The Firecracker character is basically just a worse version of the Stormfront character that we already had. And what was interesting about Stormfront was that, you found out that she was basically had rebranded herself because she was the first superhero, and she was this she was a Liberty character, but was also like a Nazi back in the day, right? And obviously Stormfront is the allusion to the white supremacist Nazi famous forum, right? So it's a little bit on the nose, obviously.
A lot of this show is a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
To be fair, yeah.
But like I found her arc to be much more interesting, and now we just have Firecracker, which is kind of like the Alex Jones version of her, which is not particularly interesting, right? Stormfront felt unique and fresh because it wasn't a character I had seen before, but like that's the problem is once we get into Firecracker and the homeboys versus the Starlighters, it's just like I already live in this world, man, and it's not even interesting commentary on the things that are happening. It's just copying and pasting it and putting it in the show.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I already know this thing, and that it doesn't go any deeper than what you see. There's not going to be any interesting backstory here.
Well, and
right?
it's also like, I don't even understand what the writers think, because the commentary on it is just the characters in the show being like, can you believe these people believe these things? That's it. Yeah. That's the only place it goes.
Yeah, it's like we agree. We see this stuff happening too. It's like, that's kind of weird, isn't it? But
most people are in that boat. Like, we don't need a straight man character in the show being like, hey, that sure is weird. It's like, we know it's weird. Like, unless you're one of like the 5% of weirdos who actually like is hardcore about this stuff and believes in the conspiracy theories, we all know it's weird. We all know it's weird. And then they institute it's even just like the Pizzagate thing where that guy comes in and is like, you're keeping the children in the basement for the child porn, and it's like it's a throwaway scene that doesn't do anything, and also is weirdly out of date because that was actually years ago at this point in time. It's not even contemporary with some of the other stuff that they're trying to talk about.
That's my point with a lot of this, is that it's not done in a clever way. It's just, hey, remember this? It's just like dragging. It's like a sequel to a famous comedy movie, just bringing back the same bits to be like, hey, you remember this was interesting before. Is it still interesting? No, it's not. But I wanted to bring up Ryan too, because I do like the general story with Ryan and Homelander and all that, where he's like, he's so messed up, but he also feels like maybe he can do things better for Ryan than what he got, kind of thing, which it's nice to add a little bit of a human element to Homelander. But the problem with the Ryan stuff now is that they're starting to pile up too much trauma on Ryan to the point where there's just like no chance this will ever resolve in any other way than him just, being crazy or dying or something like that. Like, he killed a guy, like he killed a guy at this point. And like,
I do want to say though, the way he killed the guy was super interesting. Like, one of the reveals that I liked about this season was that they fake the saves. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not just the movies, Doa. It's that they script the actual saves that are going on. And actually, I think one of the cleverer things that they did, and I don't know if you noticed this, was when they were doing the practice of the save with Ryan against the blue screen, like the camera pans around, and the other side of that studio is like the Tucker Carlson Fox News equivalent, where the desk of that show is on the other side of the studio. So it's like, it's all part of one media machine. I thought that was very fun. I thought that was a very fun bit.
I think that element's fine. But like I said, like this poor kid, like, when you want to have a character that, has some sort of like triumphant arc where they go through a lot, but eventually they make it through and they're okay, you can't you can't be piling like that much trauma. Like a kid.
I mean, he already killed his mom too, so we just put that out.
Right,
there.
exactly. But that's my point, is that they keep piling the trauma on this kid to the point where it's like it's not going to be realistic that he ever recovers from this. And maybe he doesn't, but in that case, then it's just more depressing stuff in this show. And there's already so much of it. Like, at what point does it get to be like too much, right? Where it stops being like satirical and amusing and it starts just being depressing, you know? And I feel like his character is starting to just like, every time he's on the screen, I'm just like, okay, how are they going to abuse this kid this time? You know, it's not interesting anymore, you know, because you can't picture it going any other way but badly. And like, I don't just want to watch this kid get like abused in different ways every single episode, you know? That's not a fun TV experience for me, especially with a show that's trying to be a comedy, right? Remember, the show is supposed to be a comedy, but there's a fine line between dark satire and just simply depressing to watch, right?
Sure.
And I feel like they're kind of having a bit of a struggle now finding where that line is.
I was supposed to throw them, but I did it too hard.
They gonna be all right?
Yeah, and also like just some of the whiplash we've seen with certain character stories I find really disconcerting. And also in terms of the fake drama, now we have Frenchie. So here's my question, Doa. We spend the first 3 seasons basically setting up this unrequited, unfulfilled love between Kimiko and Frenchie. And then all of a sudden, he just like falls in love with this dude who coincidentally he killed his family, but we don't know how. And then it's like fake drama. And also like it just feels so bad because I really liked the relationship between Kimiko and Frenchie. You just felt like, you know, they were both so damaged that they were never actually going to get into a relationship, but there was something real there. There was some real connection that and they really cared for each other. And so, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to go into full-blown romance, but we could have kept that tension there. And now it's just weird that we've introduced this third character that is just randomly there. And like, it's more fake drama, artificial drama about building this like new, it's now a really stupid love triangle. And I just don't care about this other guy, and I don't really understand where we're going with Frenchie's background story with all of this. So that just feels like completely unnecessary in all this. And then also, I'm just tired too of the Butcher's in The Boys, and then he's out of The Boys, and then he's in The Boys, and then he's out of The Boys, and then he's in The Boys, and then he's out of The Boys, and then he's in The Boys, and then he's out of The Boys. It's like, Jesus Christ, how many times do we have to go through this?
No, he's really out now. But I'm sure. But I do agree. That is getting tiring. Just like, let's resolve that so we can move on, you know. And then the love triangle thing too, all of this feels it feels like it's straying very far into the realm of soap opera-y.
Yes.
Where it's just drama being created for the sake of drama for these characters. But it's done in a way where, like, you know, all of the characters have plot armor now, you know? And nothing's ever... Like, why in the world did Victoria not just, like, kill Huey, you know? When like, she could have figured out a way to, like, you know, stop whatever they were going to do to try to like reveal or whatever. You know, there's so many, I feel like we're getting to the point where there's been so many scenes where like either Homelander or somebody else could have just killed the boys and just been done with it. And they didn't, for some sort of like very poorly explained or loosely, you know, portrayed reason. And you're like, all right, well, plot armor. What can you say, right? I feel like there's a lot of soap opera and a lot of plot armor going along. And to be fair, they don't really have much else to do really at this point because the show has gone on too long. Like, the show should have probably ended last season because you could have had a satisfying, and again, I haven't read any of the comics. I don't know what's going on there, but like, I feel like last season was heading to a direction where we could have had a satisfying conclusion where they do take out Homelander. They do sort of like, you know, take down Vought and like start to really change the world. Right. But now it's like we're just kind of continuing things for the sake of continuing things. So therefore, we need to create this new drama to keep the drama going, and it's all very, like I said, soap opera. You know, we're setting up for 60 seasons at this point.
No. They've said it's going to end after season 5, so this is the second to last season. But I agree, it's already too many seasons, and it just feels like we're heading towards this inevitability of like the Ryan Homelander Soldier Boy rematch. You know what I mean? Which is like, if you're going to do that, then why didn't you just kill him the first time? Right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what, like I said, I think things were setting up to have a very satisfying final conclusion in season 3, and now we're just in like the extra innings, you know. And they're
and you had to take away Soldier Boy, and you had to take away Tempy, which were the things that were setting up for Homelander. They were the only things that could potentially kill Homelander, right? But
well, we talked about this in X-Men 97 as well, when you start to recognize like, oh well, these things or these characters kind of like break our universe basically, so now we have to find reasons to offload them so we can keep the same story going, you know.
Yeah. And I just feel like that is quite boring. And I also just hate when shows ratchet up the stakes to such a degree, and we end up with these plot devices that are like, we have this entire plot arc to go get Soldier Boy and convince him to do this. Oh wait, Homelander's actually his son, and then Ryan's in danger, so all of a sudden Butcher has a change of heart, so they're just not going to kill Homelander. Which also, by the way, not really in Butcher's character. Just going to put that out there. The thing about Butcher is he is a piece of shit where any ends justify the means. That's his whole thing. And so for him to suddenly have a soft spot for Ryan, by the way, obviously he loves his wife, but not even his kid at the end of the day.
That always did strike me as a little bit odd.
But what's good about Butcher is that he is the piece of shit they need to, the U.S. government needs to accomplish the ends of controlling the superheroes, right? But if he suddenly goes soft, it's just super weird. And because he already has sacrificed his, I would say, character in order to not kill Homelander here, it also just feels like the same scene again, where he's like, I'm going to tranquilize these cookies and feed them to Ryan. Oh, wait, I'm not. It's like, yeah, we already know you made that decision. This doesn't change your character at all because we've already seen you make different priorities than what you originally had before. So again, it just feels like fake drama.
Yeah. Oh, I remember another Marvel connection. They even did the Deadpool tiny regrowing limb gag with Kimiko, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I saw that, I was like, really? I'm sure everyone who watches The Boys has seen Deadpool. There are a lot of similarities in terms of style between these things, and you're really gonna pull the same gag in season 4 of The Boys? Like I feel like there is a level of creative bankruptcy that we're reaching right now with this show that is concerning. So yeah, I don't know if it's gonna really get much better. I'd like it to, because like I said at the beginning, I really love all the characters on an individual level in this show, and I love how they're being portrayed by the actors. It's one of the best acted shows in television right now. So I'd really hate for them to start just kind of circling the drain story wise and formula wise, but it's starting to look that way. Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, it also is just starting to shatter its own believability in world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
And I know they're making a point about modern politics by having at the end of season 3, Homelander kill that guy, and then basically falsely implicates the Starlighters in beating to death his super fans and all of this other stuff. But at the same time, if you actually think about how VOD is supposed to work, the 7 are supposed to be world famous. They're on ads everywhere in the show. That's the whole point. So aren't there going to be questions about how frequently they're cycling members of the 7? Because this show started, by the way, with Lamplighter's retirement supposed to be this huge deal. And it's like, oh, we have to look for a new member of the 7, and it's going to be Starlight. And it's like a whole search, like a reality TV show search, right? And it's like, now we're just changing members of the 7 willy-nilly, and nobody has any questions about what the fuck is happening to these people or why these new members are coming in. Like, it just feels very bad, I think.
Well, like I said, the moment where Homelander kills that guy is the jump the shark moment for the show, where it's like the world ceased to be a believable facsimile of our world and started to be a different world where human beings don't act the same and don't react the same as people in our world. And so when you get to a world that's just totally unbelievable in the way the average regular person acts, then you kind of lose the ability to do satire in a way, because it kind of needs to still be grounded in a believable reality that kind of mirrors our own to a certain extent. So, yeah, like I said, when that moment happened, and then especially because that doesn't really seem to have had any repercussions in the season. I think they had like a little sort of trial or whatever, and
yeah,
then
they
just
swept it away pretty quickly.
Yeah,
but it's like
exactly.
everything else from the last season. Everything that happened at the end of season 3 is just gone. Besides
like
Butcher dying.
What they should have done with that scene should have been the main thing in this season. Is Homelander goes through this very protracted trial thing with that, and all the drama and craziness that could potentially erupt around that, right? With jurors, with all this other stuff, right? So because that him killing that guy in cold blood in front of hundreds of thousands of people on television and all that, like that should have been a defining moment for how the world views the Seven and views Homelander.
Realistically,
that could have been compelling drama.
Realistically, if I think that, like I said at the start of the show, they did a bunch of things that I think would be very realistic with how superheroes are portrayed. But if Homelander is probably in this fictional universe the most famous person on Earth. I think it'd be hard to argue with that, right?
Seems like, yeah.
He has a massive company behind him, a massive media machine. He's super powerful. He's the leader of the Seven, which is the premier global superhero. It's like everybody knows who Superman is. Like that's the analog, right? And Superman isn't real. And if he was real, everybody on Earth would know who he was, right? Pretty obviously. And so if somebody did that, if he did that, there would be no person on Earth that would not have seen that clip of footage. Right. And certainly he would have, certainly because of how people are, he would have weirdo cultists around him who would be justifying his every action. But at the same time, it does really beg our belief that, especially in this world that has already set up the fact that they are trying to politically control superheroes, that wouldn't have been just a major catalyst in public opinion for control of them, because he is fundamentally terrifying.
I really thought they were setting it up for that event to be what this season is about, and I think they should have, because that's such an insane thing to do, even in this universe, that you can't just brush it under the rug like they did. That was profoundly disappointing that they decided to just sort of like be like, oh yeah, that happened, but see, some people are just like they're okay about it because they're so like those other people, kind of that we know in real life, and this guy is kind of like this other guy that we're thinking about in the news a lot. It's like, okay, sure, we get it, but in terms of like telling a story in your universe, you should have made it more of a thing.
Yeah, and like I said, that could have just played into the entire Newman narrative as well, which is the most interesting current narrative within this show. So it is disappointing that they just made a bunch of this stuff magically
She's not
vanish.
able to publicly support Homelander because it would torpedo her campaign or whatever. But yet at the same time,
her political career is based off of controlling superheroes because it's politically expedient for her. But she can't and she gets rid of her own political opponents by murdering them, because she has this quest for power, and she will do anything for power, including regulating people like herself, which is it's very interesting, right? It's fundamentally interesting. It's like the X-Men if the persecution was being led by one of the X-Men. That's interesting. That's it. Why would you do that? What does that say about that character? And like her trying to keep that leash onto Homelander is fascinating, right? It is fascinating. Because Homelander, in a way, he doesn't actually even mind being leashed as long as he's loved. As long as he's admired, he doesn't even mind being in the gilded cage, right? Which is the tension of his character. So I don't know. I find all of that just like, it could have been like the core point of the show, and I think the show itself would have been more interesting. And the thing about that, though, is that they would have, in a way, had to abandon these modern political parallels, which it feels like they really, 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 really cared more about in this show, rather than making a piece of media that would, I think, stand the test of time better and have a unique story to tell.
We even had like a little, speaking of people losing their powers and getting them back, we even had a little self-inflicted one with what's it, Starlight, right? Where she just refused to be that for a little while. And you're like, well, we know she's going to have to again. So they even did that with her. It's one last little thing. So how many times has that been in the show now? People have lost powers and gotten them back again.
She's like, I don't want to be the superhero. I'm not that person. It's like, do you not understand that you're a symbol Like you literally are trying to galvanize a
like,
political movement while refusing to be the symbol of it. It's weird.
It didn't work in Spider-Man. It's not going to work for you. But so yeah, I feel like I don't have a whole lot more to say on it than what we've covered right now, right? Where it's like this is a show that I think has a lot going for it. It's a show that has a lot of talented actors who have done a fantastic job with their characters. But the writing, the direction of the story just is not. It's not great this season, and I hope it improves. But I am worried about the trajectory. We'll say it that way.
You know what this show needs is actually just Trey Stone and Matt Parker from South Park to like start writing some of this satire. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, maybe.
So, for example,
they'd be well equipped for it. Yeah, I suppose
they would make the show a lot better. I think
they're too busy restoring Casa Bonita right now, which is it's a very worthy cause. I'm 100% ready to go back and see what they do with the place. We were there pre them buying it. And
I'm excited to go back.
It was an incredible experience, but yeah. So if they can take some time off from that, I appreciate it. You know.
But I think like for example, you know one of the more like I think egregious sequences in this was when they were doing the Vought on Ice rehearsals, and it's like the horrible song about putting the Christ back in Christmas. It's like, guys, that isn't, nobody even gives a shit about like that element of the culture war.
It felt very old.
A decade ago now. And again, the idea of like putting the Christ back in Christmas and like appealing to core Christian values, it's not anything new. It's not a commentary on that. They're just literally doing a song and dance number that feels like the less funny version of the Book of Mormon, which is why I bring up the South Park.
That's a good point,
right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It just felt very tired because, like, in our world, the Christians that care about it are still just going to celebrate Christmas like they always have, and the people that don't celebrate Christmas are just not going to do it, and nobody cares. Everyone's more or less, it seems like, just fine with everyone celebrating how they feel like. Which is how it probably should be. So why are we doing this big? And then, of course, like, you know, it has to devolve into this like hyper
senseless
violence
kind
of thing. And it is another of those things where it's like, why is this happening? This doesn't have anything to do with pushing the story forward or anything. It's just there to be like, oh my.
Oh, get the fuck out of here!
Get out of the way!
Yeah, you know? And it's not just that Homelander uses his laser vision and like gets blinded and so accidentally kills one of the ice skaters. It's that then they all accidentally kill each other too. And it's like, why is this necessary? It's just so that scene is so bad, right? It's like, again fake drama. It's like, I need to kill Huey, and it's like, but I'm Homelander and I can't just go kill him, which he absolutely could in that situation.
But then the idea that he would try and fail, that's the thing that was the worst part about that scene, is that he's actually trying to, and he can't for some reason. Like, we know the dude would be capable of
like tear into the ceiling and find him.
You could just tear apart that entire duct in like 10 seconds. We know Homelander is capable of doing that because he's done that type of thing on multiple occasions. So that he'd just be randomly trying to pick the point where he has to shoot through. Like, it's just not believable. And like, that's what I'm talking about, is there's too many scenes now like that where it's Huey or somebody else where it's like, oh no, Homelander's here. We have to try to like stealthily escape. In the early seasons, there was real tension around that because you're like, holy crap, if this guy finds him, he'll kill them, you know? And now it's just like, oh, well, we know they're going to get away or something stupid's going to happen. They're always, here's another thing with every episode. They always have to have a scene where Homelander has a very tense discussion with one of the members of the boys where he can't kill them for some reason. That has to happen every episode now too, apparently.
Yep. Yeah. And it's also like, you know, it ruins. So first off, it's the song's not funny. The Vought on Ice isn't funny. The violence isn't funny. But also, you know, the fake drama isn't interesting, where he just can't kill Huey for reasons, even though he tastes the sweat or whatever. He's like, it's Huey, right? And Newman's like, oh, you can't kill him or he'll reveal that I'm a soup. And he's like, it's about time he did that. And so now there's just no tension because we know that Homelander just doesn't give a shit about revealing that she's a soup or anything like that, or that they're secretly working together. You know what I mean? And that they're both trying to give each other more power, which is the interesting part of the show. But I guess Homelander doesn't care. So he's just going to go kill the boys now, whatever.
It's super lame. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, there's not a whole lot more to add to it. It's just they're becoming formulaic. They've jumped the shark in their own universe multiple times now. It's just should end in season 3. These shows, I'm telling you, man, these streaming shows, this is the danger of trying to make a show like this. You got to know when to end it. You know, it's just like, it's like the professional sports player that's playing too long. You know, it's like the esports caster just keeps trying to cast when he's clearly, you know, too old. But I don't know what anything. I have no reference to that type of thing in my life to give an example of. But my point is, you got to know when to call it quits. And the show has missed, I think, the best point for that. And now we just have to hope they can kind of, you know, land the plane. But everything's on fire.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, next week we'll be back with House of the Dragon, because that's back for the summer now. There'll have been 2 episodes of season 2 out. So we'll be talking House of the Dragon on next week's episode. See you then.